Have you ever been made to feel guilty for protecting your peace? Have you ever found yourself explaining, justifying, and defending every move to people who were never really listening in the first place? Let me tell you something most men never hear. You don't owe anyone an explanation, not for your silence, not for your boundaries, not for the peace you had to fight through chaos to protect. A man's peace is sacred, and once you learn to guard it like a king guards his throne, you stop handing out access to people who only come to drain you. History remembers warriors who conquered kingdoms, but it honors the men who conquered themselves. Jesus stood silent before Pilate, not because he was weak, but because he was in full control. He had nothing to prove. His peace was already anchored in purpose. That's power. So today we're going to talk about what it means to live like that, to stop explaining and start owning your peace like royalty. We'll dive into real-life, daily decisions. We'll walk through ancient wisdom, real stories, and biblical truth. And by the end of this video, you won't just feel motivated, you'll feel anchored, like this video. Share it with a man who needs this. Subscribe for more strength, and drop a comment below. I protect my peace like a king. Chapter 1. The weight of constant justification. Have you ever noticed how much energy a man loses trying to be understood by people who've already made up their minds? There's a silent war many men fight, the need to explain themselves, to justify every choice, every boundary, every moment of distance. But here's the truth. Explanations rarely lead to understanding, especially with people who are committed to misunderstanding you. In the real world, most men aren't judged by the value of their peace, but by how accessible they are to everyone else's expectations. And the more you give into that, the more your soul begins to fracture. You begin to shrink. You speak softer, so others feel louder. You over-explain to people who don't even deserve a response, and you keep the door open for people who've already shown you they'll slam it when it's convenient. But kings don't rule like that. And let's take a look at one of the most powerful historical examples of this principle. Jesus before Pilate. He stood accused, pressed, pushed to speak. And what did he do? He remained silent, not out of fear, not because he lacked a defense, but because his mission didn't require approval. His identity didn't depend on their opinions. He wasn't there to be understood. He was there to fulfill purpose. That kind of composure is reserved for men who have gone beyond needing validation. And here's the lesson. When you need to be understood by everyone, you'll never be truly at peace, because your soul will live in a courtroom of other people's opinions. You'll be tried by their assumptions, judged by their expectations, and sentenced by their moods. That's no way for a man to live. There comes a moment when you realize your peace is too expensive to let someone else manage it. You begin to understand that your peace isn't earned through explaining yourself. It's earned through owning your truth without needing applause. It's when you realize that silence is often your strongest defense. Because silence is power, silence is maturity, and silence is the language of kings. Don't waste your days explaining your calling to people who can't even hear God. Don't let someone else's confusion rob you of your clarity. Every time you justify your boundaries to someone who only wants access, not connection, you give away more than words. You give away your authority. So here's the truth. Most men were never taught. You are allowed to grow in peace, heal in peace, and move in peace without explaining the steps to anyone. A tree doesn't explain how it grows. It just grows, rooted, grounded, silent, but powerful. And that's how you must move forward from here. Drop a comment below. I owe no one an explanation for my peace. Chapter 2. When you explain too much, you weaken your power. Every time you over-explain yourself, a small part of your inner strength gets traded for approval, not respect, not understanding, just approval, temporary, fragile, and cheap. And here's the hard truth. Explaining yourself to the wrong people is a trap. Because when you explain, they don't always listen to understand, they listen to control. to manipulate, to twist your words just enough to make you question your own boundaries. In everyday life, this happens more than we realize. A man sets a boundary, says no, steps back, protects his time. And what happens? He gets called cold, selfish, disrespectful. So he starts explaining. He writes long texts. He gives second and third chances. He defends decisions that were already made in peace. But let me give you some strength right now. You do not owe people access just because they demand explanation. Let's look at the story of Nehemiah, a man rebuilding the broken walls of Jerusalem. As he worked, his enemies sent messengers to distract him, to get him off the wall, to make him come down and explain himself. What did Nehemiah say? I am doing a great work, and I cannot come down. He didn't argue. He didn't step off the wall. He didn't explain his vision. He stayed focused. He stayed on mission. Because some explanations are distractions in disguise. And here's the lesson. When you start explaining your piece, you stop building it. When you come off your wall to argue with small-minded critics, you risk tearing down what you were called to build. Strong men don't chase understanding from people who are committed to misunderstanding. They don't beg to be seen, they choose to walk in clarity. So how do you live this? You do it by trusting that your decisions, rooted in truth and peace, do not need permission to exist. You do it by remembering that the opinions of others are not prerequisites for your purpose. You do it by cutting off the cycle of guilt and overthinking that comes every time you feel the urge to explain your worth. You don't have to prove to anyone why you needed space. You don't need to validate why you cut off toxicity. You don't have to explain why you're focusing on growth instead of chaos. A lion does not explain why it walks away. It simply knows its power. And that quiet knowing is enough. So from this day forward, let your no be complete. Let your boundary be clear. Let your peace be guarded. And most importantly, let your silence speak louder than your explanations ever could. Because a man who knows his worth doesn't shout it. He lives it. Drop a comment below. My silence protects my power. Chapter 3. Kings don't explain. They establish order. There's a reason kings don't sit down with every citizen and explain their decisions. They don't rule from emotion. They rule from clarity. And that's how you must start living. Because too many men are trying to live like kings while operating like servants in their own lives, always apologizing, always justifying, always seeking validation for boundaries that should have never been negotiable in the first place. But kings don't explain. They declare. They make their decisions based on vision, not noise, and their peace is a fortress, not a hotel. Look around at the men who've built great lives, not just in wealth, but in discipline, integrity, and purpose. You'll notice something. They don't chase every conversation. They don't defend every move. They don't flinch when misunderstood, because they know every time you explain yourself to someone who hasn't earned the right to speak into your life, you trade your crown for crumbs. Let's talk about King David, a man after God's own heart. He had enemies. He had betrayal. He had battles. But the times he stood in strength were the times he trusted his calling more than public opinion. Even when Saul tried to kill him, David didn't fight for recognition. He didn't beg to be understood. He stayed the course because peace was more valuable than being right. That's where your power lives too. Your peace isn't about silence because you're weak. It's about silence because you're above the drama. It's about strategic stillness, refusing to let people who lack self-control disturb the peace you fought hard to build. And the more you build that peace, the more you'll see. Your silence is not emptiness, it's presence. When a man walks in peace, people feel it. It intimidates the insecure, it frustrates the manipulative. It silences the chaotic because they can't control what they don't understand. Here's your turning point. From now on, stop allowing every demand for an explanation to become an invitation into stress. You are not required to explain your absence. You're not required to justify your peace. You're not responsible for making others comfortable with your growth. Some people only value you when you're available for their dysfunction, but kings don't schedule time for chaos, so set your boundaries like walls around a castle. Let your yes be firm and your no be final. Let your peace be your kingdom and guard it like it's gold, because it is. Drop a comment below. I protect my peace like a king. Chapter 4. Peace is power, and power protects itself. By now you know peace isn't passive. It's a choice. It's a battle. It's a responsibility. And if you don't protect it, the world will take it from you without asking. In this final chapter, let's flip the perspective. You're not just avoiding chaos. You're stepping into the power of inner authority. Because once a man learns to guard his peace like a kingdom, he stops being reactive and starts becoming unstoppable. The most dangerous man in any room isn't the loudest. It's the one who doesn't flinch, who isn't shaken by noise, who isn't moved by gossip, betrayal, or childish games. He's rooted, focused, calm. That's what peace creates, a storm on the outside and stillness on the inside. And here's where it gets deep. Peace is not just something you have. Peace is something you become. When you protect it long enough, it becomes your identity. Not just a mood, not just a moment. It becomes the standard for your life. And the men who change history, they lead from that kind of peace. Let's talk about Jesus in the boat during the storm. His disciples panicked. The winds howled. The waves crashed. And Jesus was asleep. Not because he didn't care, but because he was already anchored. He knew who he was. He knew what he carried. He wasn't moved by external chaos because he had internal peace. And when he did speak, it wasn't to explain himself. It was to command the storm. Peace, be still. That's the power you've been given. To not just survive the storm, but to silence it. First in yourself, then in the world around you. And here's what every man needs to understand. Your life will rise to the level of peace you protect. If you let stress run your schedule, if you let guilt shape your decisions, if you let toxic people stay in rooms they've already proven they don't deserve, you will lose your power. But if you learn to move in purpose, to speak with precision, to say no without guilt and yes with intention, you will become untouchable. Your mind becomes sharper. Your spirit becomes stronger. Your mission becomes clearer. Peace sharpens everything. So from this moment on, stop giving explanations and start giving yourself permission. Permission to walk away. Permission to stay quiet. Permission to rest. Permission to protect what makes you whole. You don't need anyone's approval to live in peace. You only need the courage to stop negotiating your worth. Because once a man knows what his peace costs, he never apologizes for keeping it. Drop a comment below. My peace is non-negotiable. If this message hit home for you, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video. Share it with a brother who's struggling to protect his peace. Subscribe for more strength and drop your comment below. Your life, peace, your mission, protect it like a king.